from Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. This past Tuesday, Mitt Romney came out ahead of Rick Santorum in the Arizona and Michigan Republican presidential primaries, but not by much. I have to wonder, is either of them doing something right? Are they each holding themselves back? And then I think I'd like to hear George Washington University Assistant Professor of Political Management Greg Lebel answer those questions and tell us exactly what's going to happen come Super Tuesday on March 6th. Now, he may not be able to answer that last question, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to ask it. Greg is in the studio, back with us to offer insights gleaned through years of working inside presidential campaigns. Thanks for joining us again on State of Belief Radio, Greg.
I would lose all credibility if I tried to answer that question, Welton. It's great to be back.
Well, there was a lot of talk going into last Tuesday's primaries about how big a win Mitt Romney was going to need for it to really count as a win and allow him to reassert his front-runner status. I guess what I want to know is, did you subscribe to that way of thinking, and if so, did he make it?
To answer the first question, yes, he needed a win. To answer the second question, by the skin of his teeth. He won, but by a really narrow margin. And I think this continues to point to the problem that Mitt Romney has about his appeal to the Republican base. Both
Romney and Santorum strike me as a campaign manager's worst nightmare.
You mean separately or together?
well, together, unbelievably. When Romney goes off script, he winds up talking about the trees in Michigan being the right height or about his wife's 2 Cadillacs. And I can't believe anybody in the campaign is vetting Santorum's outburst against Barack Obama's theology or about how John F. Kennedy's profound speech on church-state separation makes him sick. Greg, are these two rogue candidates, or maybe all four are way outside the traditional controlled political messaging campaign style?
They certainly have their rogue moments. Romney is certainly a guy who we've learned that you need to keep on script, because he just says these things that reflect a complete disconnect from the lives that most Americans live. Santorum is making his name on these rogue comments, though. I think it's part of his nature. We saw that when he was in the Senate. But this is how the Santorum has decided he's going to stay in the race. I agree with you. I'm not so sure that the people around him agree or are quite thrilled when some of this stuff comes out of his mouth. But there is a rogue quality to some of the stuff that we're hearing.
What if you were the campaign manager?
First of all, with Romney, you just got to make him stop talking off the cuff, because there is this lack of understanding, this lack of connection with the lives of ordinary Americans. My wife drives a couple of Cadillacs. That's so close to John McCain's comment about I don't know how many houses I own back in 2008 that it's mind-boggling. Santorum, I think it's possible, at least on paper, to get Romney under control. I don't think you can get Santorum under control. That's the nature of this guy. Mm-hmm. He believes this stuff, and he thinks that this is going to get him where he wants to go.
I never in my life, and I'm not exaggerating, I never in my life thought I would hear a candidate for the highest office in this land say what he said about religious freedom, about church-state separation, and the necessity of the president's role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's much like the contraception debate that came up that we talked about the last time I was here. The question is, are we really talking about this? Is this really what we have to deal with now with all of the things that we're facing in this country? Are these the issues we really want to be talking about? But again, this is a combination of the Santorum worldview and what he wants to be talking about in the context of this race. It really each new statement sort of eclipses the previous one in its imponderability.
The Washington Post has indicated they think that perhaps Santorum now will get back on a more mainstream message and talk about the economy and that kind of thing. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think that's probably the intent, and I think his folks have probably sat him down after this last cycle, and tried to get some logic in there in terms of what he should be talking about, because clearly that is the message. This is what the general election is going to be about, and they need to get him there. So that may be the intent, but I'm not convinced that he's either capable or actually, when push comes to shove, inclined to do it. He just seems to want to go to these issues.
Greg, two questions, one about Santorum and one about Romney, which puzzle me in the sense that though Santorum is directly responsible for the story I want to tell about him, Romney's not directly responsible, and I'm just interested in how you would manage this. I think that Santorum has been helped by the outrage in some quarters over the administration's contraception coverage mandate, because it parallels his conservative, borderline theocratic message, and conservative Catholics that he identifies who've stayed in the spotlight as they oppose the White House. So on the one hand, I want you to talk about that. But on the other, at the same time, there's been a Mormon scandal, not a Romney scandal, but a Mormon scandal, the posthumous baptism story that's now been confirmed by reliable journalists that hasn't touched Romney, which suggests to me that maybe his faith is kind of out of the picture for most. So you got one that it seems all about faith. The other is kind of ignoring that. What is the prominence of religion among these two Republicans?
Well, collectively, it's much higher than any of us ever imagined it would be when this thing started out, and I think that's in large part because of Rick Santorum and the stuff that he has wanted to talk about. But the interesting thing I think is that Santorum lost the Catholic vote in Michigan, and that says a great deal, I think, about the shelf life of this the messages that he's putting out there. With going back to the contraception thing, I'm not. I think if you look at the numbers now, that contraception controversy is actually breaking heavily in the favor of the administration. Mm-hmm. Once that initial kind of shock passed, we found ourselves getting to a sort of an even keel, and Americans are looking at that and saying, this doesn't make a lot of sense. This argument that Santorum and other folks are making. Mm-hmm. With regard to Romney, the Mormon thing is interesting. There are reports that the leadership of the Mormon Church are basically trying to sort of keep quiet about Romney's faith. Mm-hmm. They don't want to sort of be front and center on that because they think it will be a net negative for him. So they're sort of trying to stay away from that. It's interesting. I don't know how these stories about these posthumous baptisms will sort of roll back onto Romney, or if they will. Mm-hmm. It seems probably at some point they will, but you're right. There seems to be a separation right now. People don't seem to be making that connection, but it could happen, I suppose.
Okay, Super Tuesday is coming, and I need to know what's going to happen.
Well, don't we all? I can tell you a little bit what I think needs to happen.
Okay.
Gingrich needs to win Georgia. I think Newt Gingrich probably is in the most prominent sort of live or die position. If Newt Gingrich doesn't win Georgia, he's going to have a hard time staying in the race. This is his home state. He's got to be able to pull that off. There's no question that there's going to be a mix. Nobody's going to walk away with everything here. I think that probably one of the more interesting states is going to be Ohio. Ohio is a lot like Michigan. What Romney doesn't have in Ohio is the fact that his father wasn't governor of Ohio. There isn't a sort of a built-in name recognition there. The polls show Santorum ahead in Ohio and a couple of other states, but we haven't seen any good stuff coming since the Michigan and Arizona primaries the other day. So we're still waiting to see that. It will probably tighten up, but some of the numbers indicate, if they hold, that they'll probably be squeakers, but Santorum stands to win a couple or a few races on Super Tuesday.
They're in a part of the campaign now where, to use a much overworked term, multitasking. Multitasking is essential.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to work in a lot of places at once.
Yeah.
Which candidate's best equipped to do that?
Oh, Romney, because this all comes down to money. Believe me, I've been there personally. Lots of us have been there in campaigns when you get to Super Tuesday and all your best efforts sort of fall apart because of the lack of money, which leads to organization. To be able to function at that level in that many states with that many delegates up for grabs is really very difficult and very expensive. Now, Romney has had the money. He has far outspent all of the other candidates, including President Obama to date, combined. He and his super PAC, particularly his super PAC. So there's a lot of money there, but Romney's beginning to run into some challenges with money himself because he's dealing with big givers. They've maxed out. There's not a broad base of financial support there. So this is going to begin to be a challenge for him, but possibly not until after Super Tuesday.
What are you going to be looking for on Super Tuesday?
Well, I'm going to be looking to see how many states Romney loses, and the numbers inside in terms of whether he continues to be as unattractive as he's been to the Republican base, to the Tea Party base, and particularly to the religious conservative base, because that continues to be. Romney will still be the nominee. I'm still pretty sure of that. The road is going to be a long and bumpy one, and the question is how much damage is done, and how damaged is he as a candidate when he goes into the general election, but also how does he begin to get that Republican base to be excited about him? Because if they're not excited, it's going to be hard to get them to vote.
Greg Lebel is assistant professor of political management at George Washington University and a veteran of several presidential campaigns. I was sitting here thinking, Greg, and asking you these questions. I was asking if you were running this campaign for Romney, and it just occurred to me that is almost impossible even to hypothesize about. If you ever indicated you were going to do that, I would be the first one to get you in the hospital.
I'm having trouble imagining it, too.
Well, listen, thanks as always for sharing your insights and your expertise with us, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.